What happens when you realize that the person you've always thought you were is not who you are at all? It's a question that echoes deep within the chambers of the mind, resonating like the hum of a forgotten truth. The very fabric of your self-identity begins to unravel, thread by thread, as if the universe itself has pulled the veil from your eyes. The world you once perceived through a lens of certainty now shifts, revealing dimensions you had never even imagined. It's as though the ground beneath you has subtly begun to dissolve, leaving you suspended in an expansive space of infinite possibility. In that moment of realization, you might experience an unsettling silence, an expansive quietness that stretches far beyond the usual hum of daily life. It's the sound of a new consciousness emerging, one that stretches into places you never thought to venture, where certainty dissolves and mystery reigns. This is not just a personal crisis, it is a cosmic revelation. It is the realization that the boundaries you've lived within, the labels, the roles, the self-constructed narratives, are but shadows cast by a far greater reality. You are no longer the limited version of yourself you've known, but something far more profound, far more expansive. The self you thought you were has been revealed as a mere reflection in the mirror of existence, a transient echo of something deeper and more eternal. This realization isn't just a sudden shock to the system, it's the beginning of a journey. It's as if you have been walking down a well-worn path, thinking you understood the terrain, only to find that the path itself is a mere fragment of an ever-unfolding landscape. The landscape, which at first seemed so familiar, suddenly reveals its true, intricate nature, and you, the traveler, begin to see yourself as part of a grander design, something far more ancient and vast than you could have ever dreamed. But this journey is not only philosophical, it's deeply practical. It ripples out into every aspect of life: how you relate to others, how you view your own potential, how you navigate your emotions and actions. The moment you realize you are not who you thought you were, everything shifts. The boundaries between what is real and what is illusion blur, and the veil that once divided you from the universe begins to dissipate. The life you once lived, governed by self-imposed limitations, societal expectations, and the constant push toward personal achievement, no longer feels quite as substantial. You start to realize that the person you thought you were was a construct, a carefully built narrative that has kept you confined within a certain worldview. And now, as the illusion dissolves, you are left to wonder, who or what are you really? In this moment, you may experience both a sense of liberation and a deep sense of uncertainty. It is both exhilarating and terrifying to confront the truth of who you truly are, or rather, who you are not. You are no longer the sum of your past decisions, your failures, your triumphs, or the labels you've been given. Instead, you are part of a much larger, more interconnected tapestry, a vast, interwoven fabric that connects all beings, all consciousness, all of existence. This realization marks the beginning of a profound shift, one that transforms not only how you see yourself, but how you see the world and everything in it. And yet, it's a realization that has the potential to shake you to your core. The ego, the part of you that has been your constant companion, the very essence of your identity, begins to lose its grip. It flounders, searching for something solid to hold onto, but the foundation is crumbling beneath its feet. What happens when the ego's grip loosens, when the story it has told you about yourself begins to unravel? It's as if the fabric of reality itself is beginning to fray, and in those moments of awareness, you are caught between the known and the unknown, between the familiar and the unfamiliar. The old constructs that once defined you, your job, your family role, your social status, become distant echoes, fading into the background as something more profound begins to take center stage. The shift is a cosmic one. It's as if you are peeling back the layers of a long-forgotten reality, revealing something so vast, so expansive, that it becomes difficult to comprehend. It is as though the entire universe, in its infinite complexity, is woven into your very being. And when you let go of the illusion of self, you begin to feel it. This grand interconnectedness, this divine pulse that connects all things. The realization that you are not who you thought you were is, in fact, the awakening to who you really are. A conscious being, infinite in nature, part of the boundless flow of existence. In this realization, there lies an invitation to step beyond the confines of your previous understanding and enter into a realm where the boundaries of self and other are not so clearly defined. It is the invitation to rediscover your place in the universe, to see yourself not as an isolated, individual entity, but as a vibrant part of a vast, cosmic dance. The veil has been lifted, and now you are left with the task of navigating this new understanding, one that transcends all labels, all identities, and all personal constructs. The world you thought you knew is no longer what it seems, and you, the traveler on this cosmic journey, are left to ask, who am I truly, beyond the stories and limitations I have carried with me for so long? As we step deeper into the vast terrain of self-realization, we must first examine the core themes that guide this transformative journey, the pillars upon which the experience of realizing we are not who we thought we were stands. These themes, though timeless and universal, are often obscured by the noise of everyday life. Yet, once they are uncovered, they become the keys to a deeper understanding of our place within the universe. The first core theme is that of illusion versus truth, the illusion of self that we are so deeply attached to, and the truth of our boundless, interconnected essence. From the moment we begin to form our identity, we start weaving a narrative about who we are, based on what we experience and what others reflect back to us. We collect bits and pieces from the world around us, a job title here, a social label there, memories of successes and failures, joys and sorrows. We form an image of who we think we are, and we cling to it, often with fierce attachment. It's comfortable, familiar, and most importantly, it provides a sense of continuity and safety. But when we look beyond this constructed self, we begin to see the cracks in the illusion. We realize that much of what we have assumed about ourselves is nothing more than a mental construct, a story we have been telling ourselves over and over again. This self-image is as fragile as a shadow, constantly shifting and changing in response to external stimuli. And yet, we persist in identifying with it, as if it were our true essence. The truth, however, is far more expansive. It exists beyond the small confines of personal narrative. It is the realization that you are not the sum of your experiences, your achievements, or your failures. Instead, you are part of a much larger, more mysterious whole, a being of consciousness whose true nature cannot be captured by any label or description. This brings us to the second core theme, the expansion of consciousness. When we begin to see through the illusion of self, a shift occurs in the very way we perceive reality. The boundaries that once seemed so rigid and unchanging begin to blur. We start to see ourselves not as separate from the world, but as interconnected with all that is. The walls of the ego crumble, and what we once thought of as us begins to merge with the vast, infinite flow of existence. We are no longer isolated individuals. Rather, we are part of a greater, collective consciousness that transcends time, space, and form. This expanded consciousness is not merely intellectual. It is felt, experienced in the very core of our being. It is a deep knowing that cannot be articulated with words, only felt in the quiet spaces of the heart and mind. The dissolution of the ego is the third theme that emerges as we step into the realization that we are not who we thought we were. The ego, which has served as our guide through life, is the part of us that identifies with external labels and beliefs. It is the voice inside that constantly tells us who we are, what we want, and how we should behave. But when we awaken to the truth of our being, the ego begins to lose its power. We see it for what it truly is, a construct, a mental framework that has shaped our reality, but one that does not represent our essential nature. The ego thrives on division and separation. It tells us we are distinct from others, that our worth is defined by external achievements, and that our happiness depends on circumstances beyond our control. But when we see through the illusion of self, we realize that the ego is merely a tool, a useful one perhaps, but not the defining aspect of who we are. As the ego dissolves, a greater sense of unity and peace emerges. We begin to feel our connection to all things, and in that connection, we find liberation. The fourth theme is the infinite nature of self, the understanding that who you truly are cannot be confined by time, space, or form. The realization that you are not who you thought you were is not a denial of the self. Rather, it is an unveiling of a deeper, more expansive self. The self that is limited by the body, the mind, and the world of appearances is only a small fragment of a much larger, eternal consciousness. In this expanded view, we see that our essence is boundless, stretching beyond the confines of personal identity. You are not just this body, this mind, this lifetime. You are an expression of an infinite source, ever evolving and ever expanding. The boundaries of who you are shift and flow, just like the waves of the ocean. You are the ocean itself, not the individual wave. And then there is the theme of interconnectedness, the understanding that we are not isolated individuals living separate lives, but part of a vast, intricate web of existence. Every thought, every action, every breath we take ripples out into the world, affecting everything and everyone around us. When we begin to see beyond the illusion of self, we recognize that we are interconnected with all beings, all life forms, all consciousness. There is no true separation between you and the universe. You are an integral part of its unfolding. This realization fosters a deep sense of compassion, as we begin to understand that the suffering of others is, in some way, our suffering, and their joy is our joy. We are not isolated beings striving for personal gain. We are part of a collective experience, one that transcends the boundaries of time, space, and individual identity. Finally, there is the theme of presence, the realization that the past and future are mere constructs of the mind, and that true freedom lies in the present moment. When we awaken to the truth of who we are, we stop looking for fulfillment in the past or in the future. We no longer cling to memories of who we once were, nor do we chase after an idealized version of who we want to become. Instead, we come to rest in the present moment, where everything exists as it truly is. The past and future, once so defining, begin to fade into the background, and the eternal now becomes the only reality that matters. This presence, this awareness of the moment, is the key to true freedom, as it allows us to release the burdens of the past and the anxieties of the future. These core themes, illusion versus truth, the expansion of consciousness, the dissolution of the ego, the infinite nature of self, interconnectedness, and presence, form the foundation of what happens when you realize you are not who you thought you were. They offer a map, a guiding light, through the vast, uncharted terrain of self-discovery. As we begin to unravel the layers of our identity, we find that beneath the surface lies a truth so profound, so infinite, that it defies all description. And in that truth, we find freedom. To truly grasp the profound shift that occurs when we realize we are not who we thought we were, it is often helpful to step into the world of symbols and allegories, stories that illustrate the deeper, more subtle truths lying beneath the surface of our existence. These narratives, though abstract and sometimes fantastical, offer profound insights into the human experience and the awakening to the truth of who we are. In these stories, we see reflections of ourselves and the transformation that occurs when the illusions of self are peeled back, revealing the expansive consciousness beneath. One such narrative is the myth of the phoenix, the bird that bursts into flames, only to be reborn from its own ashes. On the surface, the phoenix represents the cycle of life and death, of destruction and renewal. But in a deeper sense, the phoenix symbolizes the process of self-transformation, the burning away of the false self, the ego, and the limitations we place upon ourselves. As the bird bursts into flames, it sheds the old, brittle shell of its previous form, only to rise again as a new being, unbound by its former identity. In this sense, the phoenix is a powerful metaphor for the realization that we are not who we thought we were. The ego, which clings so tightly to its image of itself, must undergo a fiery destruction in order to make room for the emergence of a truer, more expansive self. It is a painful but necessary process, one that ultimately leads to rebirth. The myth of the caterpillar and the butterfly offers a similar lesson. The caterpillar, content in its existence as a slow-moving, earthbound creature, has no knowledge of the metamorphosis that is waiting within. Wrapped in the confines of its cocoon, it undergoes a profound transformation, an unraveling of the very essence of its being. When it finally emerges, it is no longer the caterpillar it once was, but a butterfly, free to soar to new heights. The cocoon represents the shell of the ego, the false self that binds us to a narrow, limited reality. The metamorphosis, on the other hand, symbolizes the awakening to a broader, more expansive consciousness. In this narrative, the caterpillar's realization that it is not who it once thought it was comes not in the form of sudden revelation, but in gradual, painful change. The old self must be shed, piece by piece, before the true nature of the butterfly can emerge. The caterpillar and butterfly exist simultaneously within the same being, just as the ego and the true self coexist within us all, waiting to be revealed when the time is right. Another powerful allegory can be found in the tale of the prodigal son, a story of return, of loss and rediscovery. The prodigal son, in his desire to break free from his father's house, leaves behind the safety and familiarity of home, only to find himself lost and in despair. It is only when he returns to his father that he realizes the true nature of his existence, the love and acceptance that were there all along. The prodigal son's journey represents the journey of the soul, a search for identity, a desire to escape the confines of the known world, only to discover that true freedom lies not in the external world, but within. The prodigal son is symbolic of all of us. We leave behind the comfort of our true selves in search of something outside of us, only to realize, after much suffering, that we have never truly been separate from our source. This return to the Father is not just a physical journey, but a spiritual one. The return to the realization that we are not who we thought we were, and that all we have ever sought is already within us. In the realm of Eastern philosophy, the story of the dream of the butterfly, attributed to the ancient Chinese sage Zhuangzi, offers a strikingly profound meditation on the nature of identity. Zhuangzi dreams that he is a butterfly, carefree and flying from flower to flower, without a care in the world. But when he wakes, he is left to wonder, was he a man dreaming he was a butterfly, or is he now a butterfly, dreaming he is a man? This story plays with the notion of identity, pointing to the fundamental uncertainty of what we think we know about ourselves. The very idea that we are separate, distinct beings with fixed identities is shown to be as fluid and transient as a dream. The realization that we are not who we thought we were becomes a waking from this dream, a recognition that our true essence cannot be contained within the narrow boundaries of self. Like Zhuangzi, we are left to wonder, who are we, really? Are we the dreamer, or the dream itself? These symbolic stories, though ancient, continue to resonate because they speak to universal truths that transcend time, culture, and individual experience. They reflect the journey of self-realization, the process of shedding the false self and awakening to the true nature of being. Each of these allegories points to a fundamental truth. We are not who we think we are. Whether through the fiery transformation of the phoenix, the metamorphosis of the caterpillar into the butterfly, the return of the prodigal son, or the questioning of identity in the dream of the butterfly, we see that the path to self-realization is not linear or easy. It is a process of unlearning, of letting go of the familiar and the comfortable, in order to step into a greater understanding of who we truly are. But these stories also offer hope. They show us that the process of awakening is not an abandonment of the self, but a return to the self, albeit a truer, more expansive self. Just as the phoenix rises from its ashes, the caterpillar transforms into the butterfly, and the prodigal son returns home, so too can we awaken to the truth of who we are, breaking free from the limitations of the ego and embracing the infinite nature of our being. These allegories teach us that while the journey may be challenging, it is ultimately one of liberation and transformation. We are not who we thought we were, but in that realization, we discover the boundless possibilities of who we can become. As the veil of illusion lifts, the question inevitably arises: how does this profound realization that we are not who we thought we were integrate into our daily lives? The shift from conceptual awareness to practical application is often where the true depth of spiritual awakening is tested. It is one thing to have a glimpse of the boundless, interconnected nature of existence, but it is another entirely to live in accordance with this truth. The challenge then becomes how we translate these abstract insights into tangible, meaningful shifts in the way we approach our relationships, our work, and our personal growth. At the heart of this transformation is a shift in perspective, a change in how we view ourselves and the world around us. As we begin to realize that we are not the limited, fragmented beings we once thought we were, we must consciously choose to live from this expanded awareness. This doesn't mean abandoning our responsibilities, our relationships, or our roles in the world. Rather, it means recognizing that all of these aspects of our lives are expressions of a greater truth, and that they are not who we fundamentally are. This realization allows us to live more freely, with less attachment to the outcomes or labels that once defined us. In the practical realm, this translates to a greater sense of detachment, not in the sense of coldness or apathy, but in the sense of letting go of the need to control or possess. When we no longer cling to the image of ourselves as the person who is defined by certain achievements, possessions, or roles, we begin to experience a freedom that is not dependent on external circumstances. For example, if we identify ourselves solely as our job or career, the loss of that role can feel like the loss of identity itself. But when we realize that our true nature is not bound by external roles, we begin to approach life with a lighter touch. We can engage deeply in our work, relationships, and passions without allowing them to define or limit us. We can love without clinging, act without expectation, and create without attachment. This detachment allows us to experience life more fully, free from the fear of losing our identity in the process. This freedom extends to our relationships as well. When we recognize that we are not the individual we once thought we were, we start to see the people around us through a different lens. We understand that others are not their actions, their roles, or their behaviors. They are, like us, expressions of the same vast, interconnected consciousness. This shift in perspective fosters a deeper sense of empathy and compassion. We are no longer quick to judge or categorize others, as we begin to see that everyone is on their own journey, experiencing the same existential questions and struggles. We begin to relate to others not as separate beings with fixed identities, but as fellow travelers on the path to awakening. Our relationships become more authentic, more rooted in love and understanding, rather than in the need to reinforce our own sense of self. On a more personal level, this realization can have a profound impact on our sense of purpose. When we identify so closely with our achievements, titles, and roles, we often place our sense of worth in these external validations. We work tirelessly to build a career, gain recognition, or achieve success, all in the name of proving our value. But when we realize that our value is not contingent upon any of these external factors, we begin to experience a deeper sense of fulfillment. Our purpose is no longer something we must strive for or achieve. It is something we embody in every moment. We are not defined by what we do. We are defined by the truth of who we are. This shift allows us to engage with life from a place of inner contentment and peace, rather than from the anxiety of needing to prove ourselves to the world. However, this transformation is not always smooth. The process of living in alignment with the realization that we are not who we thought we were requires a radical reorientation of how we approach life. The ego, though diminished, does not disappear overnight. It continues to seek validation, recognition, and certainty, and we must confront these tendencies within ourselves. The key here is not to eradicate the ego, but to reframe it, to understand that while it is part of our human experience, it does not define us. The ego is like a passing cloud in the sky of our consciousness. It comes and goes, but the sky remains unchanged. By maintaining awareness of this, we can engage with the world without becoming overly attached to our roles, our identities, or our possessions. Another critical aspect of integrating this new awareness is the cultivation of presence. When we understand that the past and future are mere constructs of the mind, we are encouraged to step into the present moment fully. In practice, this means becoming more aware of our thoughts, emotions, and actions as they arise, without becoming entangled in them. It is a practice of mindfulness, of noticing without judgment. The present moment is the only place where true freedom exists, and as we come to realize that we are not the sum of our past experiences or future anxieties, we begin to live more deeply in the here and now. This presence enhances every aspect of our lives, our work, our relationships, our creativity, by allowing us to engage with each moment fully, without the distractions of past regrets or future worries. In terms of personal growth, the awareness that we are not who we thought we were opens up new possibilities for transformation. When we stop seeing ourselves as fixed, limited entities, we begin to see that growth is an ongoing, infinite process. We are no longer constrained by the identity we've carried for so long, and we begin to experiment with new ways of being. The pressure to conform to a predefined version of ourselves fades away, and we start to explore the full range of our potential. We can be more flexible, more adaptive, and more open to change. This is not a process of creating a new identity, but rather of allowing the old one to dissolve, making room for the continual evolution of our being. The integration of this realization into our everyday lives, however, is a lifelong journey. It is a practice, not a destination. It is about continually returning to the awareness that we are not the roles we play, the possessions we have, or the identities we cling to. It is about living with the understanding that our true nature is boundless, and that we are, at our core, one with all that is. As we begin to live from this place of awareness, our lives become richer, more meaningful, and more connected. The world around us transforms, as we transform from within. As we reach the final point of this exploration, we find ourselves at the threshold of a profound realization. To understand that we are not who we thought we were is not merely an intellectual insight, but a deeply transformative experience that echoes through the core of our being. It is as though we've been walking in the dark for so long, clutching onto the familiar walls of identity, only to have the light flicker on and reveal the vast, endless landscape that stretches before us. What happens next, then, is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new one, a journey that requires courage, humility, and the willingness to unlearn everything we thought we knew. The truth that we are not who we think we are is, in essence, an invitation to live differently, to engage with the world from a place of deep awareness and freedom. It is an invitation to shed the skins of our former selves, those identities we so tightly clung to, and step into a more expansive understanding of existence. It is a call to step out of the shadows of illusion and into the brilliance of truth. This realization, at first terrifying in its scope, becomes a liberation from the limiting structures we have built around ourselves, both consciously and unconsciously. We are free to embrace our infinite potential, to explore the vastness of the unknown with wonder and curiosity. But with this freedom comes responsibility, a responsibility to live in accordance with this deeper truth, not only for ourselves, but for the collective. When we awaken to the truth of who we are reminded of our interconnectedness with all beings, all life, and all consciousness. Our actions, our thoughts, and our words ripple out into the universe, shaping the world around us in ways we may never fully understand. The choice then becomes not just about our personal transformation, but about how we use this newfound awareness to serve the greater whole. In every relationship, in every interaction, in every choice we make, we have the opportunity to reflect this deeper truth, to live as embodiments of love, compassion, and unity. This realization does not come without its challenges. The ego, though softened, still has its grip, and the world around us continues to pull at us with its expectations, its labels, and its demands. The structures we have spent our lives building, our careers, our social identities, our material possessions, may still tempt us to identify with them. But as we walk further on this path, we begin to notice that these attachments lose their power. The more we embrace the truth of our boundless nature, the less we need to cling to the temporary and the superficial. The shift is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process, one that requires constant awareness and presence. In this way, the journey of realizing we are not who we thought we were becomes a path of continual awakening. Each moment, each day, offers new opportunities to peel back layers of illusion and move closer to the truth of our being. It is a path of deep self-inquiry, where we begin to ask, who am I, really? Beyond the roles, beyond the identities, beyond the stories we have told ourselves. Who am I when I am simply present, simply aware, simply being? And the answers that emerge, though not fixed or final, are transformative. They guide us toward a life that is more authentic, more expansive, and more connected to the divine flow of existence. This is not to say that the journey is easy. In fact, it is often filled with discomfort, as old identities, patterns, and attachments are loosened and dissolved. The ego resists, clinging desperately to the familiar. But in that discomfort lies the potential for the most profound growth. Just as the seed must break open in the darkness of the soil before it can sprout and reach toward the light, so too must we face the darkness of our own ignorance before we can emerge into the light of our true nature. The process is messy, it is imperfect, and it requires great patience with oneself. But in time, the darkness fades, and the light of awareness shines more brightly. As we awaken to the truth of who we are, we begin to recognize that we are not separate from the universe, but are inextricably woven into its very fabric. Our lives are not isolated events. They are part of a grand, interconnected dance of existence. And just as we are not who we thought we were, neither is the world around us. It is not the rigid, separate, material world that we once believed it to be. It is an ever-evolving, interconnected web of energy, consciousness, and possibility. As we shift our perception, we begin to see the world in a new light, a light that reveals its beauty, its complexity, and its divinity. The invitation now, then, is to embrace this new reality with open arms, to step into the unknown with trust, to live from the place of true knowing that we are not bound by the limitations of the past or the future. We are free, in each and every moment, to create and to experience life from the depths of our soul. And in this freedom, we discover that our true nature is not defined by what we do or what we have, but by the vastness of who we are. We are consciousness itself, infinite and eternal, and every moment of awareness brings us closer to this realization. The world will continue to challenge us, to present us with obstacles and distractions. But we must remember that these are not signs of failure. They are simply the universe's way of guiding us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves. With each challenge we face, we are invited to ask, how can I respond from the truth of who I am, rather than from the egoic self that I once thought I was? And as we move through the world with this awareness, we become agents of transformation, not just for ourselves, but for all of existence. The call, then, is clear. Awaken. Awaken to the truth of who you are, beyond the illusions and limitations of the ego. Awaken to the vastness of your being, to your connection with all life, and to the infinite potential that lies within you. This realization is not an endpoint, but a beginning, an invitation to live a life that is truly free, truly authentic, and truly connected to the divine flow of existence. The journey is ongoing, and it is yours to take. With each step you take on this path, you awaken not just to who you are, but to the very nature of reality itself. And in that awakening, everything changes, not just for you, but for the entire world. This is the call of awakening, and it is yours to answer.